Good evening. Welcome to another edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. My name is Leon Jones. Let me get right into it. Tonight, this is going to be an education type of video. And I'm doing this content because there are a number of philosophies that are flying around on the mainstream media, i.e., fascism, communism, Marxism, capitalism, you know it. Now, earlier, I did a video on the types of government. Now, so you'll know, there's a difference between the styles or systems of government and the economic and political philosophies of government. Now, when I did a video earlier, I talked about democracy, I talked about colonialism, I talked about nationalism, I talked about republics. Those are systems of government. Now, tonight, I'm going to talk about the economic, or let's say more the economical and political philosophies of governments. The economical and political philosophies of government. Because the media, you always heard the word democratic, fascism. And see, for the average person, they don't know what they mean. So I'm going to give you my overview of fascism. Fascism is a far right type of philosophy, very authoritarian. It's right of communism. In fact, they're on the opposite sides of each other. Then you have socialism, which is in between communism and capitalism. With socialism, the government redistributes all of the resources. In other words, the government centralizes all the resources and they base everything off of more an egalitarian. You're going to get this, you're going to get that. Then you have capitalism, which capitalism, you have private ownership. Communism, you don't have any private ownership. The government owns everything. Now, what I just gave you were overviews. Now, I'm doing this because when it comes to politics, and you're going to hear the mainstream media, the left in this country will not give up. The election has been over for roughly 5 weeks, and they're still talking about Donald Trump. Well, like it or not, he's 47th president. Now, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to give you my overview on this first one. And this first one, this is an introduction to Marxist theory. Now, you've also heard Karl Marx out there. And Karl Marx was a German philosopher. Now, he was communist. He said he wasn't a Marxist. Now, he sold Marxism because most of the individuals in the past as well, they didn't want to deal with communism. So he sold himself as a Marxist. Now, his views was a materialist. To understand society, we have to understand how it organizes production. We have forces of production, deal with land, technology, skills, knowledge, etc. And we have the social relations of production. Who controls the forces of production and how? Forces of production will come into conflict with the relations of production. The class structure of a society. Well, those who are at the top control the wealth, and those in the lower class do most of the work that produces the wealth. That equals exploitation. This is under Marxism. This exploitation is the basis of class conflict. Also, historical examples of class conflict, i.e., slave versus slaveholder, the lord versus peasant, and they're modern examples. Now, this is where capitalism comes into play. Because Marxism believes that the capitalists are the bourgeoisie, the snobs, the stuck-up ones, and the proletariats are the workers. That's under Marxism. So basically, the bourgeoisie alienates the proletariat, according to Marxism. Now, the economic base and the superstructure, and we see under the economic base the forces and relations of production, i.e., the bourgeoisie, which would be the ruling class against the workers, who are the proletariats. And the superstructure is the legal and political structures of society. You also have the economic base, and that influences the superstructure. The economic power, of course, is the basis of all types of power. So the bourgeoisie, therefore, controls society's institution to help maintain the status quo. Capitalism. Again, Marxism, on Marx, he was not in favor of capitalism because he was a stone cold communist. Now, Marx's critique of capitalism, he believed that it was exploitative, alienating, undemocratic, irrational, environmentally destructive, prone to war. Now, you think about it. The United States is, for the most part, a capitalist country. Now, you had other countries in the past, like your Western European countries like France. They were actually fascist countries. But during the Cold War and during all these other wars, was the United States fighting? They were fighting against communism. See, Karl Marx, again, was a communist, not a Marxist. But he did not like capitalism because he believed that the ruling class alienated the working class, the proletariats. Well, if you think about capitalism, though, capitalism has a hierarchy. You look at the Indians, they have a caste system. It's basically the same thing. But with capitalism, everybody has an opportunity to own something, not the government. But see, under Marxism, this is what is said, was said. Eventually, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat will conflict, giving rise to an economic system. The large workforce under capitalism will realize they are being exploited and will mobilize to start a popular revolution. This will create a new social order where the workers are in charge of the production. Well, what is that? Marxism. And we get into communism and socialism. So in his writings, Marx says very little about what a communist or socialist society would look like. But what he does say is you're going to get cooperation rather than division. You're going to get economically, democratically controlled. It means the government's going to control the economy. Social equality exists and all forms of oppression would disappear. That means he's talking about you're going to have the ruling class and the bourgeoisie class all on the same level. It's going to be equal. Well, you know that's not going to last too long. And he said the environment would be respected. No profits for a minority of people. Work would be fulfilling. So basically, he's basing this whole political philosophy off of working people. Well, if you think about it, when you go to work today, or let's start with the military. Well, the individuals in the military, known as your enlisted individuals, they're the ones who actually do all the work. Then you have your warrant officers in 4 out of the 6 branches. Now, the Air Force is coming back with warrant officers, and Space Force is coming back with warrant officers under IT. But basically, it's a structure. And the people at the top are always going to make most of the money. They're making most of the decisions. They have to take most of the responsibility. It works. And if you look at the hierarchy that's in every structure now, it comes from the military. Again, at the top, you have the president, vice president. Then you have the SecDef, which is the Secretary of Defense. Then you might have General of the Air Force, General of the Army, and the Admiral of the Navy. Now, of course, there is no General of the Marine Corps because the Marines are the Department of the Navy. And then the chart opens up. But you're going to have most of your flag officers, which is your generals and your admirals, at the top of the food chain. Then you're going to have your full bird colonels, of course, your captains. They're running ships, they're running bases. You have your XOs. Your XO could be a lieutenant colonel, a commander. Then they could also be, depending on what type of command you got, could be a lieutenant commander, could be a major. But when you hear the word shit rolls down the hill, well, it actually does, because it comes to the top, from the top to the bottom. And if you think about capitalism, capitalism to some people is greedy. It's only greedy for those who want the corruption. Now, you see so many individuals in the government, like your Democrats, they'll tell you they don't like capitalism, but they benefit from capitalism. They make the rules for themselves. Now, also, I'm looking at no profits for a minority of people. Well, the minority of people who are your workers are never going to have profits because they don't own anything. But that's what he's saying. Under Marxism, it would happen to the minority of people. So if you think about that, if the minority of people wouldn't have profits, the question is, would the majority of people have profits? So that question has to be asked, and work would be fulfilling. Well, how would work be fulfilling under Marxism? Because my critique of Marxism, Marxist theory has failed in practice. Marxist views are in conflict with human nature. Capitalism has changed since Marx's day, so its criticisms are no longer relevant. Conflict theory, cultural materialism. Well, citizen journalism, as known as public participatory, democratic guerrilla, or street journalism. Citizens play an active role in collecting, reporting, analyzing, and disseminating news and information, made possible by new media technology, social networking, smartphones. And you have criticisms which are unregulated and too subjective. Again, this is an overview of what Marxism is. Now, how might Marxist theorists viewed citizen journalism or consider citizen journalism in light of the unit essential question: have advances in technology been good for people? As we watch Fruitvale Station, think about the application of Marxist theory, conflict theory, and cultural materialism. Well, if you look at a number of your college professors, particularly in the humanities or liberal arts department, they teach Marxism. This is why you have a lot of your snowflakes coming out spewing at Marxist propaganda. And you have a number of them who are working in the media. And what the Marxists, socialists, and communists do, even in your government, they refer to the other side as fascists. Well, there's nobody more authoritarian than they are. But what they want to do is silence the other side. But they say the other side is doing what they're doing. See, one thing that the left does read, and I'll go over it in another video. I went over it a long time ago. The rules of Alinsky. Rules for radicals. Need to read that. Alinsky. The rules for radicals. Did a video on that a long time ago. Have to reintroduce that concept, because if you're going to be a well-informed voter, you need to understand what these terms in the media mean. And see, the media, they want ignorant people. And you see what happened on the Democratic side. You had a lot of ignorant people. They did not know what's going on. In fact, if you think about it, let's put some of Marx in power here. Well, the ones in the media and in the government, really, unconsciously, they're Marxists, because they're the ruling class, they're the bourgeoisie. And people like me, we're the proletariats, we're the workers, and they want to have massive control over the workers to a certain point. Not enough to where we're going to be slaves or working for peanuts. But in the long run, the Democratic Party in this country, they practice those isms. When you talk about equality, I believe in equal opportunity, but really they don't want equality, they want equity. Which, if person A started 200 feet ahead of person B, well, how about we get person B to person A? Well, we have to tell person A to stop so person B would catch up. You see the equal opportunity of outcomes. So in other words, you're going to have to take something from somebody and distribute it to an individual that you believe doesn't have a chance. It's like the old saying, if I have a 6-foot guy and there's a fence and he can look over the fence, but you have a 4-foot person and they can't look over the fence. Well, how can you compensate for that to make that 4-foot or 5-foot guy look over the fence? There's going to have to be a handicap. And see, what the Democrats basically present is a handicap, special rights. Then you hear the words like oppression. You hear the words like sexism. You hear the words like racism, all these other isms that come into play. And then there are other ways that these words even go Further, like marriage, is considered oppressive to women via feminism. But if you hear all those isms, they're basically forms of Marxism, socialism, capitalism, or correction, communism. Now, communism can be capitalism for the government because the government owns everything. Now, also, when you have fascism, what came out of fascism? National Socialism or Nazism. That's where you heard people like Hitler come into play. Mussolini, I believe it's Mussolini, that wasn't Mussolini, but I'm just going to say Hitler, all from fascism. And this is what you are hearing the left. See, the left has been authoritarian for a long time. And because they don't understand what goes on the right, they want the right always to identify with what they say, even when they're wrong. They call the right fascist. Well, what's happening here is when you disagree with the left, they want to cancel you. But yet they're telling me I'm the one that wants to cancel them. See, the left, all they want to do is stay in power. And if you think about the Democratic Party, they're the party of the Klan. Well, what was the whole purpose of the Democratic Party? To keep the Republican Party, particularly that's where blacks join the Republican Party, to keep them down. That was the purpose of the Democratic Party. Now, there was another party that they had known as the Whig Party, the WHIG Party. That was the last party. Right now, we have a two-party system. And I'm going to do some education on that as well. I'm going to teach you all about American government, how it works. You're going to get a free education here. And that way, when you go into your poli-sci class, if you have to take it, you can challenge your Marxist and communist professors. Now, I'm going to share my screen again. And what I'm going to do, I just gave you Marxism, but I'm going to give you a comparison of the economical and political philosophies of these types of governments. Now, what I'm going to do, I will share the link to this under my video because this is very, very important. So, what we have up here, we have socialism, fascism, communism, and capitalism. And we have main topics of each. We have ownership, equality, prices, taxes, healthcare, notable figures, and then we have the general philosophy. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go left to right, and I'm going to read you and talk about the differences with these four economic and political philosophies of government, starting with ownership. So under socialism, okay, socialism has it that individuals may own property and small businesses, state ownership of essential services such as electricity, water, and internet. So that means your utilities would be owned by government. Now, technically, are utilities owned by government? It depends on where you are. A number of them are quasi-government, like here in Indiana. We used to have Indiana Power and Light. Now it's Citizens Engineering, Citizens, it's CEG. I'll just say CEG, and the gas is AES. That's what it is. Some cities own your water. internet. Internet is not public. It's private and public. And what I mean, the government owns their Wi-Fi, if they have their own Wi-Fi, and private sector, they own their Wi-Fi. And what I mean by owning their own Wi-Fi, well, let me correct everybody on this. Here in the United States, the internet is privately owned. The government may purchase internet services from a private company. Let me put it to you that way. But under socialism, individuals can own property, but all of your utilities, the internet would be owned by the state, which is the government. Now, under fascism, individuals may own property and small businesses. However, state ownership is going to be essential through a dictatorship. So that means it could be a monarchy, a king can own all of the services that make your cities work, like your electricity, your water, and your internet. Now, when it comes to capitalism, individuals have the right to own property. And there's little to no government ownership of services or production. Now, again, if you look at the first two, government owns the services under socialism. A dictator owns all the services to fascism. But now individuals may own, now they may own, that word may own, property and small businesses. But with capitalism, individuals have a right. And when it comes to communism, entire elimination of property rights, no individual land ownership, no economic incentives to own. That's because the government owns everything. Basically own you. Now, when it comes to equality, what the left wants is socialism. It's basically a redistribution of income to create equal classes. Now, there's total freedom of religion. But when it comes to money, basically, they want the people at the top to subsidize the people at the bottom. Nothing is ever equal. Doesn't make sense. But that's the philosophy of socialism. And when it comes to fascism, nationalistic religion, unequal redistribution of wealth to reinforce a rigid class structure. So you might, under fascism, nationalistic religion, where would you find that at? Probably over there in the Middle East. That's where you would find religion that is nationalistic, because many of them, their governments are based off of religious philosophies. Now, when we get into capitalism, that's why everybody loves capitalism, because you have a freedom of movement and a free economy gives people equal opportunity to pursue life. Now, notice, equality is not forced. You're given equal opportunity, regardless of who you are. Now, you might not get the outcome you want, but you're given an opportunity based on how you move. Now, when it comes to communism, All are equal under the eyes of the government except for the ruling class, which is in charge of the redistribution of wealth. This is why I told you when it comes to capitalism, the government enjoys everything and everybody else gets the peanuts. And it is very, very oppressive type of government. And everybody knows it. You have people, oh, it's good. They've never lived under communism. Now, under socialism, when it comes to prices, redistribution of wealth through government oversight, price controls on staple goods while much of the economy runs unfettered. Now, this is what Kamala Harris wanted, price controls. So she wanted to go in her business and tell them, you can't charge that much. But what happens is the economy is going to run ragged. That's exactly what she wanted. She wanted the government to go in and control the prices that businesses can charge. That's very intrusive. That won't work here. That also causes chaos because the economy is out of control. And then when we get over to fascism, prices are set around class structure and are influenced by supply and demand, which is basic economics. And then when you get into capitalism, capitalism is much different than fascism and socialism because the prices are set by the corporation, business, or consumer through supply and demand, not influenced by supply and demand. They're set through supply and demand. That means the market dictates everything. And also, you have competition. And what competition brings with business and the market is lower prices and better products. Now, again, this is the philosophy because we know here in America, there are a lot of monopolies. If you don't believe me, look at the wireless providers. There are only three. Now, I might say, well, there's a lot of other wireless companies. No, those other companies actually use the towers of AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. Now, under communism, when we get into prices, the prices are defined by government who respond and control the economy to artificially control pricing. So, under communism, the government controls the economy. Under capitalism, the market controls the economy. Under socialism, the economy runs amok because of price controls. And then under fascism, it's influenced by the market. There's no competition. It's just influenced by the market. Now, when we get to taxes, under socialism, taxes are always high. Why? Because you have to pay for social services, and under socialism, you have a welfare state. And in the United States, we have a bunch of welfare programs. Under fascism, high taxes are focused on raising military funds for national defense. So again, fascism is very militaristic, but not National Socialism. Like Mussolini. Also, with capitalism, you have limited taxes to match limited government. So that means government does not make its revenue if you have less taxes. But then again, what I'm talking about are confiscatory taxes that are taken out of your paycheck. Well, here's the thing. You have payroll taxes, You also have fees. They're, in my opinion, they're taxes. You have sales taxes. So they're still making revenue. But the problem with the taxes here in the United States is the government, they waste a lot of money. You just heard Biden, I believe he sent $51 billion over there to Ukraine or to the Middle East. 51 billion. He's really trying to wreck up the country on his way out. That's the problem when you have taxes. So when you lower taxes, you basically cut the amount of services that people need. Also cut a lot of jobs out because you have a number of individuals who are government employees who work in social services as well. They don't tell you that. This is why the left always argues against cutting social programs. This is why they always go back and it's about the children. No, it's not about the children. It's really about the money going to those government workers. That's what it is. With the children being a human shield. Then, if you go into communism, the taxes are very high. Strict tax rates focus on redistribution of wealth to central power. So that means, again, the government controls everything. Central power, government rules. Now, going under socialism, healthcare. Socialism, it's operated by the federal government. Government-run healthcare. Free and access to all. But what do you get with it? It's not being said. It sounds good, but to me, I want market control healthcare. And see, under fascism, you get access to free healthcare as well, but the requirements, race, national citizenship, are usually factors. So with both of those isms, fascism and socialism, you have government-run healthcare. This is what some people on the left want here. They want government-run healthcare because they think it's going to make everything equal. Healthcare is a privilege. It's not a right. Now, when you deal with the capitalist form of healthcare, little or no government regulation, and it's all determined by the market, free market. Now, when you get into communism, it's accessible to all, but distributed unequally. Less access to the poor and operated by the federal government. Now, you think about this. Talk about communism. You have some people that want communism. Communism doesn't give you the equal outcome. Now, at least for socialism, and I'm not a fan on socialism, but if you look at the theory, and even if you look at fascism, there's some portion of equality that's mentioned where they redistribute the resources equally. But when it comes to communism, resources are redistributed unequally. And guess who gets the least amount? People at the bottom. That's what they don't tell you. This is why communism is dangerous. But you have a number of people here on the left. They want that. Now, if we get into some of the figures for one in socialism, one comes to mind. You're not going to believe it. A great scientist himself, the theory of relativity. Yes, Albert Einstein, he was a socialist. Then you had Friedrich Engels, and Cesar Chavez. They were socialists. Then as we get into fascism, you have people like Nicola Mandic, Adolf Hitler, and Benito Mussolini. And then when we get into capitalism, you had Adam Smith, Ronald Reagan, George Washington. And then when you get into communism, Stalin, Lenin, Vladimir Lenin. You have to throw Pol Pot in there too. Fidel Castro, Karl Marx. Those are individuals who are communists. China, communist country. Mao Zedong, another one, communist, revolutionist. And usually under communism, a lot of people are killed. See, the media is not going to tell you that because they want to give you all of this that communist or communism is good. And they're teaching individuals in college that philosophy doesn't work. Now, overall, looking at the general philosophy of socialism, it's very internationalistic with idealized future based on redistribution of wealth to fund and support social programs. That's what you get. Now, when you get under fascism, it's not international. And what do I mean by international? Global. So fascism is the total opposite. It's nationalistic, usually centered around one powerful individual with an idealized past that encourages individualism. In capitalism, the free market will determine the prices and competition will drive improvements. And with communism, capitalism has failed. And this is the words of Karl Marx. It has failed to help the working class because it only incentivizes individualism and therefore must be torn through force. And that's what you get through communism. So basically, if you think about it, socialism overall is international. That's why some people like it. Fascism is national. Free market is under capitalism and the government. The government runs everything under communism. So again, the next time you hear the media talk about how good socialism is, come look at that chart that I gave you and look at that PowerPoint that I gave you on Marxism. Because that's what the left loves. They love socialism, although they've never lived under socialism. Now, do we have social programs here in the United States? We absolutely do. But if you think about it, we have capitalism here. You can still own businesses, certainly depending on which administration is in power, the amount of regulations that the government puts on businesses, it will make or break businesses. Now we have Donald Trump coming into office. Some of those regulations, a lot of them will be lifted so we can make money again. That's what I mean. When you have a socialist type of regime running this country, you're going to see more oppression. You're going to see higher inflation. That's what socialism, communism do. You'll have a lot of inflation. We'll base everything off of equality. And if you don't, you're sexist. You're racist. They basically, socialism and communism tear down the traditions in America. Family. This is why you have the rift in the Black community, where I don't need a man. Because bottom line is the government has become the daddy in the Black community. Yes, some of the men did leave, but the government became the daddy. And the government incentivizes single motherhood. I guarantee, cut all of the social services out, you'll have less single mothers. Why? Because if they have a child, the father's going to have to take care of it, or she'll have to take care of it by herself. So when you hear this, I don't need a man, see how much government money they're getting. Also, you have some programs like DEI out there. Yes, it sounds good, but that basically takes somebody because of their race or gender, puts them in place of somebody that's qualified to fill a quota. You see a lot of that in the government. They're trying to promote equality, diversity, but it's all false. It's to make the individuals or minorities feel empowered. But guess who doesn't get any of that? Black men. So we know white men hold most of the power. Black men don't hold any power. But what we're equal to white men is, it's the white man who makes all the rules. But as black men, we don't have anything. This is why we're at the bottom. And if you think about it, look at a lot of black women, most of them support the Democratic Party. It's because most of them support socialism, a little bit of communism. But most of them support socialism because there is a difference between both. I mean, communism, they don't want anybody to own anything, so they take it by force. Socialism, they basically redistribute wealth to pay for social programs. Now, the United States, we have capitalism here, but we also have socialism here too. Why? Because I'm not going to say a lot of the taxes support social programs, but a number of them do, because we're also giving money away to other countries. We're also giving money away to migrants who are technically criminals for crossing the line illegally. And they're getting better health care, getting more money than people who are actually paying the taxes. So in the end, if you look at the philosophies, I'll summarize it. Socialism is international, and they basically redistribute wealth to pay for social programs. Fascism is more nationalistic, and it redistributes wealth based on race and citizenship. Capitalism is market driven, and communism, the government owns everything, capitalism fails, and they take everything by force. Again, some of the great leaders that I just mentioned, I did tell you Karl Marx was a communist. Ronald Reagan was a capitalist. Donald Trump was a capitalist as well. Mussolini, he was a fascist. Hitler was a fascist. Albert Einstein, yes, Albert Einstein was a socialist. So in the end, you tell me what economic and political philosophy appeals to you, and tell me how it would work. Because in the end, I'm just going to say this. I believe in free market capitalism, where everybody has equal opportunity. That opportunity depends on you. Now, if you think about it, socialism and communism are collective, whereas capitalism and fascism are all individualistic. But in the end, you want market to control the economy, or do you want the government to control the economy? You be the judge, because it's your future, it's your choice. It's a quote from the United Negro College Fund. But in the end, it's your life. You decide how you want to live. Other than that, that's my commentary for this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. If you like what I just presented, please comment, share, and subscribe. And if you're looking for some STEM content, you check out the QCIS channel right here on YouTube. Now, here's where you can find me. The 411 Talk Zone radio show. You can find me on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, Rumble, and Truth Social. And for the QCIS channel, find me on YouTube. You can find me on X, formerly Twitter, and LinkedIn. And in the end, be blessed for what you have. Don't worry about what you don't have. Always know that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. And if it doesn't apply, let it fly. But if the shoe fits, wear it. If you don't like the shoe, just change it. Once again, thank you for listening to this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. Till next time, my name is Leon Jones. You all have a wonderful, gracious evening. God bless you. I'm out.